Created in 1979 as a 43-episode anime series, Gundam has flourished and grown to become a media leviathan across the world as a pioneer of the mecha genre. With almost a half-century of animated series, literature, video games, orchestral performances, theater productions, and a sea of model kits, Gundam simultaneously has something for almost anyone to enjoy, while also being a daunting franchise some newcomers understandably struggle to get into. Where do I begin? What order should I watch? What even is a Gundam? Such questions are only natural for someone first encountering a series as large as Gundam. And so whether you are a newcomer to Gundam, a longtime fan, or even someone who has until now just enjoyed building model kits, it is the intent of this video to provide an introduction to the primary setting of Gundam known as Universal Century, so that you may better enjoy its characters and their journeys. For those who may be concerned with spoilers, do not worry. There will be no spoilers for any of the animated Gundam series, and the footage chosen for this video was selected to avoid spoiling anything for new viewers. This video is a synthesis of the in-universe history for the setting that was dispersed across a plethora of different anime, novels, manga, and guidebooks, and the end will bring you to the very start of the first episode of the original Mobile Suit Gundam. However, in case you want to jump right in, the chronological viewing order for Gundam Universal Century's primary narrative is as follows. Mobile Suit Gundam, Gundam 08 MS Team, Gundam 0080, War in the Pocket, Gundam 0083, Stardust Memory, Zeta Gundam, ZZ Gundam, Char's Counterattack, and finally, Gundam Unicorn. Note that despite its name, Gundam the Origin is an alternate canon manga and partially adapted anime which tells a different version of Universal Century's events and timeline, and so should be viewed separately after the previously mentioned entries to prevent confusion. Now, without further delay, welcome to the world of Gundam. The Earth Federation. By the end of the 20th century of the Anno Domini calendar, Earth faced a severe crisis as overpopulation, conflict over finite resources, and environmental collapse all coalesced. After initial efforts failed to quell these rising issues faced collectively by humanity, it was determined that the only way to avoid the permanent ecological destruction of Earth and the extinction of the human race was to join under one banner. This would serve as the impetus of the Earth Federation's foundation, a singular governing body comprised of all former nation-states and people across Earth, with the absolute, unquestionable power necessary to police humanity from the brink of ruin. To accomplish this, the Earth Federation divided once powerful countries in order to ensure that there was little difference in economic or military strength between them. This was ostensibly to ensure equity between its citizens in the Federation's grand experiment of total democracy. However, true power would continue to reside within politicians hailing from former leading nations. The means by which the Federation established its total sovereignty were not without conflict or turmoil, as joining the Earth Federation was considered mandatory for every existing nation and people. To curb division within its newly established order, the Federation stamped out concepts such as faith, regional culture, and previous boundaries. Wielding overwhelming military power, the Federation suppressed dissent and separatist movements piece by piece to ensure total compliance to its environmental designs. This decades-long process was pursued by the Federation relentlessly, claiming their cause as saving their tired Earth from nuclear war, pollution, and environmental destruction. The culmination of this radical form of environmentalism would be the ideology known as erism, that the Earth was sacred to humanity, and that it was humanity's destiny to live in outer space, a belief which would spread in the preceding decades. With the future of not only Earth but humanity itself at stake, the Earth Federation would expand upon existing initiatives to colonize outer space as a form of population control. At first, this would take the form of colonies on Earth's moon, but would expand to produce what would become known as sites, floating groups of colonies in specific locations around Earth and the moon, known as Lagrange points, where the gravitational fields of the Earth, its moon, and the sun all neutralized each other to form a stable balance. As their foothold in space expanded, the Earth Federation made emigration to the colonies compulsory and enforced it globally, prioritizing the removal of the economically disadvantaged and those with anti-Federation sentiment, making no exceptions based on culture or region. By now, Earth's population totaled 9 billion, and while this forced emigration proceeded gradually at first, it would accelerate as more colonies were made to accommodate Earth's surplus population. The first colonies were built at the fifth Lagrange point, thereby establishing Side 1 as the cradle for space colonists. To celebrate this new era of humanity, they fashioned a new calendar, the Universal Century or UC, that would be used from that point forward. Announcing this change was Ricardo Marcenas, the first Prime Minister of the Earth Federation and leader of its liberal coalition. The Prime Minister's upbringing across a myriad of nations fostered his well-known support of the colony project and its future citizens, seeing them as fellow emigrants, and thereby empathizing with them in a way many of his contemporaries could not. Despite these sympathies, Prime Minister Marcenas would perish in a terrorist attack on his personal residence on the early colony known as Laplace. With the terrorists possessing anti-Federation sentiment and connections, a drastic shift in the Earth Federation's policies would soon follow the Laplace incident as hardline politicians used the attack to garner public support against colonists. The Federation would abandon concessions regarding fair treatment and rights for space colonists, instead tightening their grip to prevent further terrorism like the attack on their Prime Minister in the very first seconds of the Universal Century. Space colonies. By the year 0022 of the Universal Century, the Federation would announce its military victory over its ideological foes who resisted it for any cause, be it cultural, religious, or territorial. During these opening years of the Universal Century, the Space Colony Project would continue its expansion, thereby needing a new cluster of colonies that would become known as Side 2 in the fourth Lagrange point. By June of 0018 UC, Side 2 reached a total of 1 million new births within its colonies, showing the continued growth of humanity, even as its population gradually shifted in location. The Island 3-style O'Neill cylinders, 6.4 kilometers in diameter and 36 kilometers in length, served as models for the colonies comprising these sides, with a standard colony housing up to 10 million residents. The designers divided these structures internally into 6 lengthwise strips, alternating 3 window sections for outside light with 3 habitat sections for the population. Each colony was fitted with a large mirror outside each window component to reflect light onto the habitat opposite to them. These large mirrors were placed across from the sun to best collect its light and provide the bulk of the colony's energy supply. Such was their design that by adjusting the angles of the mirrors, a sense of the passage of time or season could be granted to inhabitants. On each colony, there would be collections of dome-shaped agricultural centers opposite the sun, arranged in a 14.35-kilometer ring around the colony, positioned to obtain light from the mirrors. These centers could provide a surplus of food for a single colony's population and inhabitants. But, by the mandate of the Earth Federation, all surplus was to be exported to Earth, leaving only the minimum required for each colony to sustain itself. Beyond sustenance, the rotation and shape of the colonies accounted for the need for gravity, allowing colonists to possess an artificial life akin to that of Earth. Construction of 5 more sides would occur in the next half-century. Built at the second Lagrange point, Side 3 would be the farthest colony from Earth, residing beyond the Earth's moon, and comprised primarily of a new type of colony known as a closed type, as compared to the open type colonies of Sides 1 and 2. The adoption of this new form of colony stemmed from the logistics involved in creating Sides 1 and 2, which involved complex systems and technologies to create and use the windows and mirrors in open type colonies. Because of the complexities and delicate nature of colonies, accidents which would cause delay were common, and provided a bottleneck for the increasing need for such habitats. To remedy this, the closed-type colony was proposed as a method to engage in more practical construction of further colonies. While possessing the same dimensions of their open-type counterparts, closed-type colonies generated energy from solar power plants positioned around them to replace the mirrors and windows. Requiring less complex technological needs would lower the cost of the construction for these closed-type colonies as well as reduce their production time. The lack of windows would increase the space for colonists to inhabit to twice that of open-type colonies, meaning that each colony could on paper possess twice as many people. Despite this, the agricultural component of each colony would remain the same, resulting in an overall agricultural deficit, thus requiring trade to provide for their populations at full capacity. The overall reduced costs and increased living space per colony reduced the financial burdens on emigrants to Side 3, providing them the cheapest means to live in space, at the expense of comfort and quality of life. Starting with Side 4, the Federation would again construct sides using the open-type model, having overcome the logistical and technological difficulties of their creation. This decision followed from the decreased living conditions that closed-type colonies possessed, making open-type colonies preferable to many. Side 3 being comprised of colonies that could accommodate a larger population would result in it possessing a far greater population than its fellow sides, though many of those who emigrated to Side 3 lacked the means and wealth to either remain on Earth or live on an open-type colony instead. By the year UC 0040, approximately 40% of the Earth's population had forcibly emigrated to space under the Federation's policies. The creation of further sides rapidly at this time allowed this number to increase to around 80% by the year UC 0050, possessing approximately 9 billion of the Earth's total growing population of 11 billion. Those who emigrated to space and their children would come to be known as spacenoids, differentiated from their Earthbound counterparts in both location and political status. In its early years, the Earth Federation would come to possess a political dynasty in the form of its third Prime Minister, George Marcenis, son of its founding Prime Minister Ricardo Marcenis, with George serving as a leader to the Federation's more conservative elements. Contrary to his father's sympathies, George would implement policies that disadvantaged spacenoids in favor of the wealthy few who remained on Earth. As the universal century progressed, those still on Earth would petition against the forced emigration to space, out of a desire to continue inhabiting Earth themselves, insisting that those on Earth would retain the right to rule over all the space colonies unilaterally. The Federation's political mandate in favor of its Earthnoid citizens would be made manifest through legislation such as the Alien Landholding Law of UC 0051, inevitably causing a political schism between those of Earth and those born to the colonies as second-class citizens. It is under these conditions that Sideism would rise, a nationalist movement of those in outer space who believed that all space colonies possessed the right to self-determination and independence from the Federation. Zeon Deikun. In UC 0045, the increase of Sideism would lead to the rise of the political philosopher Zeon Deikun, who proposed the idea of Contolism, bringing both Earism and Sideism together as one political movement. By UC 0052, support for Deikun had grown to the point that upon migrating to Side 3, where his support was strongest, he was rapidly integrated into its political structure. With the support of the people of Side 3, Deikun was able to immediately make overtures towards his ideals of Contolism, setting the roots for what would become the dominant political theories and ideology of the following decades. In addition to Contolism, Zeon Deikun would also become known for theorizing about the evolution of humanity into what he would call new types, human beings who would adapt in outer space and thereby expand their consciousness, allowing them to communicate and understand one another through telepathic thought. Alongside his belief that new types would be the future of mankind, this theory would inspire a growing attitude in spacenoids that they were superior to those of Earth. If Zeon Deikun were to be believed, they were a new race of improved human beings, while those on Earth were archaic relics of humanity's past. Zeon Daikun's grandiose and idealistic rhetoric resonated not only within Side 3 but across the various sides, fueled by growing distaste for the Earth Federation's absolute democracy. This led many to seek alternative governance models for Earth and its colonies. The political reality and contradictions of a system of dictatorship by the majority, while an increasing majority of mankind possessed disjointed or reduced suffrage, would weigh the Federation down in time, reinvigorating separatist ideology previously stamped out. Such institutional decay would cause a theater of parliamentary procedures, ill-advised and outright discriminatory legislation, and endless obfuscation. Such shrouding of responsibility for any one politician existed thanks to there being a sea of them, a result of one government's dominion over an entire planet and its colonies. Stagnation took root as even minor policies became embroiled in factional disputes among competing interests and their respective bureaucratic entities, ultimately satisfying no one except for those already in positions of prestige who could perpetually coast on the status quo. Not all were blind to the compounding flaws within the system, however, as some within the Earth Federation's government noticed the mounting dissatisfaction of their constituents. While relatively few in number, they were still sympathetic to the growing sides who suffered in particular from the glacial nature of the Federation and sought to grant them a voice. Such sentiment was overwhelmed by the return of hardline Earth-centric politicians who would take control of the Federation government at every level, quelling the possibility of the sides' voices being heard in any meaningful capacity. The combination of these circumstances in UC 0058 would result in Zeon Deikun being named leader of Side 3 through massive popular support, an opportunity he would leverage to proclaim Side 3 to be a republic politically independent of the Earth Federation. This fledgling nation would be named the Republic of Zeon after its founder, but Side 3's relative freedom was short-lived, as the Federation quickly realized the precedent this secession could set for its continued dominion. If the Federation were to remain the unflinching, unquestionable God that ruled humanity for its own good and survival, it could not abide by any who would dare question its authority. For this reason, the Federation implemented the draconian Bardo policy in UC 0059, a comprehensive embargo and economic sanction on Side 3 that prevented the supply of resources or any other form of trade with the now independent colonies. In direct response to Zeon Daikun's proclamation of independence, and to bring Side 3 back into the fold, the Federation would deprive the Republic's heavily populated colonies of vital resources and set an example. The Bardo policy would prove devastating to Side 3 given its unique nature as a cluster of closed-type colonies. They could not sufficiently generate enough sustenance through agriculture for their large population without outside trade, nor did they possess the resources and minerals necessary to maintain and repair their colonies. Unable to overcome the blockade, Daikun instead resolved to create a colony defense force to protect Side 3 from invasion. The founding of Side 3's own independent military would result in the Federation's own reinforcement of its naval forces in UC 0060 to reaffirm and solidify its control over space. In this period, Side 3 was left to languish as an isolated, starving colony unable to support its entire population thanks to their inability to trade with either the Earth or other sides. It is during this period of economic strife and resource depletion that a woman by the name of Nalis Zabi would pass away in childbirth to her son, Garma Zabi. In her passing, Nalis would leave behind 5 children and her husband, an at the time insignificant man by the name of Daikun Zabi, who was well regarded in the local community, especially by Side 3's manual laborers who were a powerful voting bloc in this time of colony expansion and maintenance. The Bardo policy would not be the end of the rising temperature between nation-states, with further legislation such as the Alien Exclusion Act of UC 0062 sparking further discord. Even with anti-Earthnoid sentiment rising exponentially in Side 3, a significant portion of the population still opposed Zeon Daikun's views, and would side with the Federation, thereby paralyzing Side 3's legislative efforts to address its growing unrest. The sea of political chaos which embroiled Side 3 would see the rise of a new figure in the independence movement, that being Daikun Zabi, who, while once apolitical, was able to enter the realm of politics through grassroots support. Inspired by their father, Daikun's eldest sons Gyerin and Sosero would join Daikun's movement as well, quickly making names for themselves as organizers and public speakers through a combination of charisma and intellect. Daikun and his family would become known for their staunch support of Zeon Daikun's movement, even while Daikun himself would serve as a representative of working-class spacenoids and on their behalf present a grounded, moderate platform that contrasted with Zeon Daikun's academic and idealist perspective which appealed to a more radical element. This contrast would not prevent Daikun and Zeon from becoming close allies and friends in the following years, and soon they would prove an effective pair in the Republic of Zeon's parliament. Gyerin Zabi, in contrast to his father's more tempered platform and support for gradual reforms, would quickly rise as a figurehead for the radical youth of spacenoids who had only ever known the Federation's scorn and would repay it with terroristic wrath. In UC 0065, using radical loyalists to the cause of spacenoid independence, Gyerin silenced pro-Federation sentiment by organizing purges of those who opposed Daikun. This period would become known as the Black Year, with political violence escalating and culminating in the elimination of over 200,000 members of the pro-Federation movement. At the same time, a rift would form between Zeon Deikun and Daikun Zabi, caused by a clash between rhetoric and reality, a divide that would only grow with Gyerin's illegal actions. though both Zeon Deikun and Daegun would privately condemn Garen for the atrocities committed in the name of Continentalism. Ultimately, Garen would receive no punishment or formal reprimand. The most likely reason for this was that his elimination of their opposition paved the way for the legislation and policies necessary for aiding Side 3's dire situation imposed by the Federation's blockade, furthering their movement as it was no longer held back by those still clinging to the Federation. This rift between pro-Spacenoid factions would only be the first of many, with another forming between Daegun and Garen, the latter of whom believed that the ends justified the means no matter what those means were. Amid rising tensions, the unthinkable would come to pass in October of UC 0068 with the sudden death of Zeon Deikun, severe illness taking the revolutionary almost overnight. In his passing, Zeon left behind his wife, Tor, and his 2 children, Casval and Artesia, his family royalty in all but name, given his status and reputation. The shining beacon of Spacenoid independence had collapsed and would pass away soon thereafter, his goals of independence only partially realized as the Republic of Zeon remained in a state of hardship. The Principality of Zeon. On his deathbed, Zeon Deikun would speak and gesture to Daegun Zabi, his longtime friend and supporter, right at his side despite their previous political differences. Daegun Zabi would claim that Zeon Deikun in his final moments had asked him to lead Side 3 for the good of Spacenoids. This claim was of course unverifiable, but the majority of Side 3 would come to believe it given the close collaboration between Zeon and Daegun in the preceding years. Those firmly in Zeon Daikun's camp, such as a political rival to Daegun by the name of Jimba Ral, would infer a far more sinister reason behind Daikun's final act, that the noble leader of Spacenoid independence had been accusing Daegun of having been the one to kill him, something Jimba Ral could not prove, yet believed fanatically. Jimba Ral would rally prominent Daikun loyalists to aid him in spreading such rumors widely. However, a lack of supporting evidence led to their quick dismissal by most of Side 3's population. With Daikun's final blessing, Daegun would rapidly rise to become the new Prime Minister of the Republic, amassing power and support from once combative sources who now sought to help Daegun fulfill Zeon Daikun's will of Spacenoid independence. This outpouring of support would rise even further when Daegun's second son Sasro would be assassinated by radicalized supporters of Daikun, who were believed to be acting on behalf of Jimba Ral. In this way, with the support of the people and most of the Republic of Zeon's political factions, Prime Minister Daegun Zabi came to wield unprecedented power over Side 3. This absolute power derived from the will of the people would enable Daegun in UC 0069 to legally reform the Republic into an autocracy, known as the Principality of Zeon. Aiding this transformation of the nation was Garen, who retained his predilection for silencing opposition through the usage of what would become his secret police. Still carrying the will and mission of Zeon Deikun, Daegun would exploit the cult of personality of his predecessor to build a similar cult of personality around his own family, establishing the Zabi family as the true heirs to Spacenoid liberation. Meanwhile, the children of Zeon Deikun would be spirited away to Earth by Jimba Ral, where they would adopt the names Edward and Selah Mass. This was done ostensibly for their protection, as they were endangered by their status as possible contenders to the legitimacy and power structure of the Zabi family, though Jimba Ral possessed an agenda beyond their mere well-being. Hidden away on Earth, the two could live in peace and comfort with the Ral family, safe from the danger of being eliminated by Garen's secret police. However, Jimba Ral would make certain to raise Casval with the knowledge of what he believed happened to Zeon Deikun, as well as who he believed was to blame for this perceived injustice: Daegun Zabi. Witnessing these events transpire from afar, the initial approach of the Earth Federation towards the Principality of Zeon was to continue its embargo and blockade of Side 3, acting under the belief that the Zabi faction and the surviving members of the Daikun faction would partake in a power struggle that would defeat Zeon from within. In this way, the Federation waited for Side 3 to collapse of its own accord, a mistake that would prove costly, as this gave the Zabi family time to consolidate its power further, and to eliminate what remaining opponents and institutions stood in the way of their nation's transformation from a republic into a powerful dictatorship united under one cause: the freedom of Spacenoids from the grip of the Earth Federation. It was for this purpose that Zeon's government had been transformed into authoritarian rule by Deikun and Giran. As to oppose the Federation and maintain their sovereignty, the Principality would require military and logistical means near impossible for Side 3 to obtain through democratic processes, which would require the consensus of many, rather than the will of the few. Over years of serving within the political machine, both Deikun and Giran had come to realize that while words held power and Zeon Deikun could stir the hearts of the people as an agitator, the man had lacked the political acumen to accomplish their shared goals. Whether they played any role in his death, it was unquestionable that Side 3 flourished more with Zeon Deikun as a deceased martyr than it did under his leadership. A vital aspect of Zeon's transformation was the reformation of its local defense forces into a national military, with the Principality investing deeply in military technology and development. It was their belief that a powerful military was crucial if Zeon was to maintain its sovereignty when the day came that the Federation stopped waiting for their internal collapse. This initiative saw the impassioned youth of Zeon readily join the ranks of the Principality's fledgling military, ready to defend their homeland and fight for their ideals. To assuage fears born of their now totalitarian regime, Deikun would institute a reformed parliament which would handle mundane matters and the concerns of the people of Zeon. This granted them suffrage and control that they felt they lacked under the Federation, though such a system was subordinate to the commands of the Zabi family should any dissonance come to pass. Leading this body would be Prime Minister Darcia Bakaro, who, while primarily a puppet of the Zabi family to maintain order over the parliament, would still act in his capacity to help the citizens of Side 3. The remaining Deikun loyalists opposed to the Zabi family after the Principality's creation would be purged by Giran's secret police, eliminating anyone who sided with Sosro's murderers and those who remained loyal to the deceased Zeon Deikun instead of his successors. Given their prior disagreements over Giran's severe methods, it is unknown to what degree Deikun was aware of Giran's secret police, though by this point their divisions were less those of a father and son and more of those between competing political entities. In spite of Deikun's misgivings about Giran, as his primary aide and eldest heir, it was only natural for Giran to assume the mantle of supreme commander to Zeon's growing military. Deikun would also place his third son, Dozal, and his only daughter, Cecilia, into other positions of power befitting their station, with both proving themselves as highly competent leaders and forming support bases of their own. Dozal growing particularly popular among Zeon's soldiers, while Cecilia gained status with Zeon's intelligence agents. Out of concern for his youngest son, Garma's development, Deikun had kept the media on Side 3 away from his son throughout his youth. This veil of protection would come to a natural close when, as a teenager, Garma would step beyond the Zabi family palace and join Zeon's officer academy. News of his enrollment spread like wildfire, causing Garma to become a national idol overnight when the people got to know their youngest prince. This rapid acquisition of status and reputation would be entrenched when Garma gave public addresses to the people of Zeon, always beginning with the sincere words, "Thank you, friends, for giving me the opportunity to address you." Garma was soft-spoken and said to possess a nobility to his delicate features, a stark contrast to the political rallies of his firebrand brother Giran, who in UC 0071 wrote his book Survival of the Selected, inspired by Zeon Daikun's theory of new types. While Giran attracted Side 3's radical element, the vast majority of Zeon's population idolized their youngest prince. Mobile suits. In March of UC 0070, Zeon saw success in its military research when a particle discovered by a scientist named Minovsky was field-tested, proving successful at radio jamming and other interference on the mock battlefield. The particles damaged machinery exposed to them, and while thick shielding could counteract their effects on battleships, it couldn't protect conventional missiles and similar weapons, thereby reducing their range. The usage of these Minovsky particles would prove vital to later developments in Zeon's military program, for their ability to render long-range wireless communication systems useless and lowering visibility, as well as for qualities possessed by them which proved invaluable to developing powerful fusion reactors. With Minovsky particles lowering the effective range of weaponry and warfare, Zeon would develop tools to one day engage the developing armada of Salamis and Magellan-class vessels commissioned by the Federation in September of UC 0070. It was in UC 0073 that Zeon developed the first mobile suit, a large humanoid machine with a pair of manipulators and legs. Labeled MS-01, it would see further iterations and developments as the MS-02, the MS-03, and most importantly the MS-04, which was equipped with a Minovsky reactor. The following year, Zeon would complete the first combat version of the MS-04, and at 17.5 meters tall and over 50 tons in weight, the MS-05 Zaku-1 was born. While aware of their existence, the Federation overlooked mobile suits as simple tools for manual labor, unaware that they possessed capabilities vital to warfare's evolution once Minovsky particles became deployable. Large enough to possess shielding against Minovsky particles, yet agile enough to evade incoming firepower thanks to their powerful fusion reactors, mobile suits were well equipped for combat up close, where their superior maneuverability and precision could overcome a more conventional vehicle of war. Despite their powerful weaponry for engaging in ship-to-ship combat, Magellan and Salamis-class cruisers lacked design considerations for Minovsky particles, leaving them ill-equipped for battle in what would become typical battlefield conditions in the evolving landscape of war. These spacecraft, shaped like the battleships of the Anno Domini era, would be vulnerable to far more agile weapons of war like the Zaku that had been built to engage in the close-quarters combat that the release of Minovsky particles would necessitate. Engineers would further improve the MS-05 design for combat with the MS-06 Zaku-2, enhancing its armor power and speed significantly. For battle, the MS-06 could wield a 120mm machine gun, named more for its shape and how the mobile suit carried it than for its actual classification, for in reality it was more like a rapid-fire cannon than a conventional machine gun. Its firepower was enough to tear apart tanks and ships with ease, especially at close range where it was more accurate and flexible as a weapon than the long-range cannons possessed by the Federation's cruisers. Additionally, the Zaku could possess a Heat Hawk, an axe-shaped weapon with a superheated edge that could tear through an enemy ship like paper. To support its mobile suits, Zeon would begin development of numerous classes of warships, most notably the Musai in July of UC 0075. Zeon designed the Musai and its contemporaries not only to provide supporting fire but also to house mobile suits for rapid battlefield deployment and Minovsky particle dispersal. In the view of Zeon's military, it was important to take every advantage they could as, despite being the largest side, Zeon possessed a single-digit percentage of the overall wealth, resources, and manpower the Federation could call upon. In order to fuel Zeon's research and development of their growing military, the Principality would begin harvesting resources from asteroids in the solar system away from the Federation's military blockade. As the collection of colonies furthest from the Earth, Side 3 could establish these mining colonies without interference, most notable among them being the asteroid axis, much like how the Federation had used the large asteroid Luna 2 for resources before transforming it into a formidable fortress. Throughout this period, Garen's influence over Side 3 would spread as he gathered loyal followers as leader of Zeon's armed forces, as well as within most other realms of Zeon society. Their media was state-controlled, its prominent figures under Garen's thumb. The parliament was increasingly stocked with politicians who owed their careers to him, such as Representative Toto, and Zeon's secret police would eliminate any supposed threat to his control. In April of UC 0077, an event known as the Raya Revolution would spark when a nationalist group on Side 6 captured the local Federation garrison, prompting a brief civil war. The Principality of Zeon provided support to the nationalist movement and deployed forces to block outside Federation soldiers from intervening, resulting in the victory of the nationalists and the declaration of Side 6 as the Independent Republic of Raya. Princess Cecilia Zabi of Zeon would serve as the driving force behind Side 3's support of Side 6's independence, with rumors permeating of her having been the architect of the revolution. Having aided another colony in obtaining legal sovereignty, that same year the Principality of Zeon would begin full preparations to wage a war of independence from the Federation. While allegedly made to possess enough force to drive the Federation back from space, the development in this period of mobile suits and other vehicles dedicated to land and aquatic combat under the orders of Garen demonstrated his true intent. Utilizing his widespread influence to gradually usurp pieces of the sovereign's power, it was Garen's belief that only by conquering the Earth Federation that his aspirations of bringing about a new age for humanity could be realized. one where he would lead the chosen people of Zeon and cull the excess populations of humanity, in particular those considered undesirables. Careful to conceal his intentions of total dominion from his father, Gihren continued preparations for a conflict far greater in scope than Daikun might agree to. At this time, using data obtained from Zeon's mobile suits, the Federation would develop the first of their own mobile suits, creating the first prototype of what would become known as the RX-75 gun tank. While far behind Zeon in mobile suit technology, this would later prove important to the brewing conflict between their nations. A noteworthy graduation would soon take place at the Zeon Officer Academy, with Prince Garma Zabi graduating as valedictorian of his class. While possessing high marks in his classes, as well as skill in piloting both mobile suits and military aircraft, Garma had actually placed second to his friend and fellow student Shar Aznable, who had emigrated to Side 3 as a youth in 0074 to join Zeon's Officer Academy. Possessing remarkable piloting ability, Shar possessed a somewhat maverick nature, which would end up costing him his top placement in their class when he disobeyed an instructor. This outcome would suit Shar, who seemed intent on staying out of the spotlight and was fine allowing his good friend Garma to take his place at the top of their graduating class. In return, Garma would highly recommend his friend to his siblings as an excellent pilot and soldier. With Garma's growing fame within Side 3, it would become Daikun's desire to utilize his youngest son to one day control and curb the excesses of Gihren. The influence Garma possessed over Zeon's people was great, even if his station and direct command of Zeon's government was as of yet non-existent, a temporary roadblock that could change as he grew older and could earn his place. Garma was insistent that he not be handed authority or accolades without earning them, though Daikun would occasionally do so against Garma's wishes, a result of his favoritism of the son who reminded him of his late wife. Daikun was aware of the erosion to his own political power by Gihren, yet lacked the will and ability to openly oppose his son during this crucial point in the Principality's rise. Side 3 had come a long way since the time of Zeon Deikun, and had become self-sufficient in most regards thanks to its mining operations as well as its newfound influence over Side 6, but was not yet powerful enough to handle infighting if it was to one day overcome the Federation. Despite seizing totalitarian control of his nation, Daikun had remained dedicated to his cause and the population he now ruled over, though the grips of tyranny would take root as he proved unable to stop the growing Girenist faction. While once an effective politician, Daikun proved incapable of employing the same ruthless and pragmatic attitude with his own family. Year 0078 of the Universal Century saw the settlement of an incomplete side known as Side 7, with the Earth Federation's colony development initiatives having slowed as the decades proceeded, and Earth's population having lowered to approximately 2 billion. Overlooked by Zeon due to its unfinished nature, this side would later prove crucial as a location for the Earth Federation's operations. This year also would see the mass production of the MS-06 Zaku II, as well as the completion of the first prototypes for Zeon's MS-07 Goth, MS-08 TX Ifrit, and MS-09 Dome for land warfare. For aquatic operations, Zeon also finished the first prototypes of numerous suits, including the MSM-01 Zaku Marine type, the MSM-03 GOG, the MSM-04 Akai, and the MSM-07 Z-GOK. Zeon would also begin development of what would become known as mobile armors, mobile suits designed without traditional humanoid features and built to possess greater firepower than their counterparts. Come October of UC 0078, Zeon would announce its military mobilization, seeking to launch a surprise attack on the Federation in the coming months and eliminate their control over space. Gihren would control operations as Supreme Commander, placing his brother Dozul in charge of the Space Attack Force as a Vice Admiral, his sister Kycilia in charge of the Mobile Assault Force as a Rear Admiral, and eventually placing his youngest brother Garma as leader of the Earth Attack Force as a captain. Unknown to many within Zeon's military, Gihren would also plot to utilize weapons such as the deadly G3 gas that when deployed could wipe out the entire population of a colony. The purpose of such an unethical and monstrous tool was to wipe out colonies loyal to the Federation, or which possessed Federation garrisons, depriving the Federation of some of its greater population and military strength that would provide the Federation an overwhelming advantage in direct conflict. Only requiring a single mobile suit armed with G3 gas to wipe out an entire colony, Giran intended to slaughter millions who stood in his way before the Federation could even react. Aware that others might object to these plans, the pilots ordered to carry out these attacks were left in the dark as to the true nature of their armaments, with the truth set to be covered up after the fact by Giran's secret police. Still nominally in charge, Deikun would grant permission for a plan by Giran that would be known as Operation British, which would see a single colony drop down on the Earth Federation's primary base, Jaburo. Located in the South American continent, Jaburo was deeply entrenched and its location top secret to all but a few. Such was its construction that it was resistant to even nuclear weapons like Zeon would employ elsewhere, but the impact of a colony was estimated to be capable of destroying any man-made structure. By crushing the Federation's military in one strike, Deikun reasoned they could sign a favorable peace treaty and end the conflict with minimal loss of life. Simulations of the attack were run, and it was set into motion. The Zeon War of Independence. On January 3rd of UC 0079, the Principality of Zeon would launch simultaneous attacks against sides 1, 2, and 4, using a combination of its mobile suits, battleships, nuclear weapons, and chemical weapons. Commencing 3 seconds after Zeon declared war, the attack would come to be known as the 3-second warning, and would overwhelm Federation forces and civilian populations in the targeted sides. The series of resulting battles that took place would become known as the one-week battle, during which billions of lives would be lost to Zeon's unilateral opening strike, and from the crossfire between both factions thereafter. The culmination of Zeon's assault was on the 10th of January in the form of Operation British, where a depopulated colony from Side 2 was utilized in the plan to destroy Jaburo. Despite the Federation's attempt to stop the colony, including a nuclear strike to damage it, Zeon succeeded in their objective of dropping the colony down on Earth. This did not, however, mean that the operation was a success, as because of the damage it incurred from the Federation's assault, the colony would break apart in atmosphere, resulting in its trajectory shifting and the broken pieces of the colony spreading across Earth. Of the shattered colony, the largest piece would crash down upon Sydney, Australia, obliterating the city entirely and damaging the surrounding region catastrophically. A 500-kilometer crater marked Australia, as approximately 16% of its territory was flooded. Other large portions of the colony would scatter across North America and the Pacific Ocean, causing further ecological damage and far greater destruction than expected had the entire colony struck its intended target. Tidal waves, typhoons, and other such severe weather phenomena would rage thereafter, claiming even more lives than the initial impact. It is estimated that in total, Operation British killed half of Earth's population. However, this severe loss of human life did not deter Giran from planning a second colony drop to rectify the failure of the original. This would cause the first major fleet battle of the war, known as the Battle of Loom, where Giran would target Side 5 on January 15th. In this battle, Dozo Zabi would lead over 100 ships from a Zeon fortress known as Solomon, bringing approximately half of Zeon's entire army to bear for the battle. Meanwhile, the leader of the Federation forces, General Revel, gathered a fleet 3 times that size to repel Zeon. The usage of mobile suits by Zeon would make up for their size disparity, with Zeon's mobile suits possessing nuclear weapons and other such armaments to eliminate the Federation's vessels effectively. This conflict would see the devastation of both fleets, while ultimately favoring Zeon, with the Federation losing over 80% of its force, while Zeon lost 30% of its deployed armada. The Battle of Loom would cause the complete destruction of Side 5 and its population of over 1 billion spacenoids. Despite this, on January 17th, Giran would utilize the ruins of Loom for propaganda, to show the might of Zeon's military weapons, thereby inspiring the people of Zeon, while demoralizing the already defeated Federation forces further. Over half of the entire human population had perished in the span of weeks, all in the name of spacenoid independence. Loom would see many Zeon pilots become revered for their talent. In particular, Shar Aznable, who would become infamously known as the Red Comet after sinking numerous Federation vessels in his personalized red mobile suit. A capable pilot by the name of Ramba Ral would earn the moniker the Blue Giant, as despite being the son of Jimba Ral, Ramba had remained in Zeon as a dutiful soldier in contrast to his father's self-imposed exile. During the battle, a three-man team known as the Black Tri-Stars earned notoriety by capturing General Revel, further depleting the Federation's combat capabilities with their leader now a prisoner of war. Pushed back to their last major fortress of Luna 2, the Federation would agree to sign a peace agreement with Zeon on January 31st in Antarctica. Under the initial agreement, Zeon would have its independence recognized and the Federation's operational ability in space would be limited, with these favorable terms resulting from the Federation's belief in Zeon's military strength exceeding what it actually still possessed after losing so much in Operation British and at Loom. This misconception would be revealed by General Revel, who had been rescued by the Federation from Zeon custody at a fortuitous moment, and who would give a speech about Zeon's exhaustion from the Federation's stronghold of Luna 2. According to Revel, Zeon was pushing for peace now because they could not push farther, and that to surrender would be to allow tyrants such as Deikun and Giran Zabi to reign. This speech would revitalize the Earth Federation's forces and cause the Antarctic Treaty's terms to be altered to instead codify the neutrality of Side 6, as well as ban the usage of nuclear, chemical, and biological weapons after the widespread destruction they caused in the opening stages of the war. Rather than ending the war as it was initially meant to, the Antarctic Treaty would serve as an overture to its next stage, the invasion of Earth itself by Zeon forces. This invasion, led by Garma Zabi, would rapidly come to seize control of North and Central America, parts of Europe, and sections of Asia. To accomplish this, Zeon deployed forces across Earth in large waves over the course of months that overwhelmed the Federation's defenses thanks to Zeon's usage of mobile suits. Unable to take Luna 2 with the remaining forces at the Space Attack Force's disposal, Zeon opted to instead invade Earth and use its resources to replenish their ranks. With the Earth Attack Force organizationally belonging to Cecilia Zabi's Mobile Assault Force, the invasion of Earth allowed Cecilia to begin her own mining operations that siphoned resources away from the main Zeon army and instead would aid her own expansion of power. This would be overseen by Cecilia's right-hand man Mukuve, who would take Odessa in Europe as his base of operations. Garma, meanwhile, would use a series of captured military bases in California to serve as the primary headquarters for the Earth Attack Force, using the captured location to develop and create mobile suits for the continued invasion of Earth, and ultimately to conquer Jaburo. Despite their technological superiority at the beginning of the war, the lack of relative manpower possessed by Zeon allowed the Federation to drag the war into a battle of attrition, slowing Zeon's advance as the Federation sought to further its own mobile suit development. Launching a program known as Operation V, the Federation could leverage its greater resources and research teams to hasten their mobile suit development. It is at this point that the war entered a stalemate, one which would last until September 5th, when forces led by Shar Aznable stumbled upon the Federation's Operation V hidden on the incomplete Side 7. The fate of the Universal Century would be determined that day when, for the first time, the Federation mobile suit labeled the RX-7082 Gundam entered the battlefield. Mobile Suit Gundam. Next episode, Gundam Rising. Who will survive? Now that you are ready, click the video above to begin watching Mobile Suit Gundam. And if you enjoyed this video, please consider liking, sharing, and leaving your thoughts in the comments below.